Your business isn't stuck because you're miserable. It's not stuck because you have anxiety. It's not stuck because you've got some alignment problem. Exactly. It's probably stuck because you're not doing the activities that help it to not be stuck. Have you ever found yourself working harder than you've ever worked before in your life, in your business, after you've hired team? My name's Amanda, and welcome to the show. I'm going to talk to you today about one of those things that keeps entrepreneurs really stuck, which is the pattern of hiring team who's supposed to help, who's supposed to be alleviating and relieving the burden, only to find yourself on this hamster wheel of running hard to keep up with all the expenses of your business. You keep telling yourself that once you make this next milestone of revenue, then everything's going to be better. And month after month, you keep telling yourself that you're going to do a better job of leading your team. You're going to do a better job of hiring in the first place. And, between your tears and sobbing, as you look at your P&L, you realize that there is something that maybe no one ever told you. So I'm hoping that this video is going to shine a little bit of a light on the whole hiring thing if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing six figures or more. Now, when you add team, the ideal is you're not actually working a whole heck of a lot harder, right? So in this video, I want to unpack for you, how can you delegate with greater confidence? How can you build more output that leads to acquiring more clients or retaining the clients you have better? And how do you get off of that hamster wheel of doom? I'm super excited to walk you through this because this is personal. When I first started my business years ago, I was as like apple pie. Was I gonna say apple pie or a pie in the sky? I was optimistic, okay? I thought I could just transition from working full-time as a consultant for a large corporation into entrepreneurship, no problem, because after all, I was a consultant in business. But I learned very, very quickly that when you have the backing of a giant corporate machine, there's a lot of things taken care of that you just don't even think about. And when you become an entrepreneur and you've got your boots on the ground, you realize that there's actually a lot of things that you previously didn't have to worry about that now become your concern. One of the first softwares I ever used in my business was called 17 Hats. Not an ad, I don't use them now. But it was such a great name for an application software for entrepreneurs because that's exactly what it feels like, maybe even 500 hats. And so it wasn't long after I got going, hit my first six-figure mark, that I was starting to feel really overwhelmed. I was busy all the time, way busier than I was when I was a corporate employee, even though as a corporate employee, I told myself I was so busy all the time. I had amazing clients, but I was always nervous that I wouldn't be able to backfill and replace those clients. And I knew that I needed to make progress on my marketing and on my systems so that all of this could stay together, keep the band together, sort of thing. So my business coach at the time said, well, why not just hire an assistant? I was charging premium prices for a service. And, looking at the top line of my revenue, you would think, yeah, that makes so much sense. Go ahead and hire some support. You deserve it. So she hooked me up with a part-time virtual assistant based here in the United States. And that assistant ran me about $60 an hour, but I wasn't using her full-time. I was using her very part-time. So I thought that's a pretty reasonable investment. And she was great. She knew how to do all the technology. She knew how to schedule emails, how to handle the scheduler. But what happened was the same thing I see happening to a lot of entrepreneurs even today. So for me, that was back in 2017, 18. Here in 2026, even with AI, even with all of the advancements that we've been able to enjoy in this period, people still find themselves on the same hamster wheel that I did, which is I never really had the time to properly utilize that resource. I wasn't giving her the level of work that I had imagined when I first hired her. And I've always felt like Friday showed up really quickly every single week. And so here I am just like continuing to run on the treadmill. And a couple of months later, even as I was struggling with this first part-time hire, I somehow managed to convince myself I needed another assistant, right? Like I clearly hadn't freed up enough time with the part-time assistant. I'm going to go ahead and get a full-time assistant. So this time I hired an assistant out of India. He was wonderful. He was brilliant. He was smart. But I had the same problem, only now I had it with 1.5 resources, right? I still each week wasn't giving them the briefings, definitely wasn't filling their time, but I was paying them to be on my team. And I didn't want to fire them because if I fired them, then it would be admitting that I should have probably never hired them in the first place. And I found myself just running even harder on the revenue treadmill, right? Or the hamster wheel, as I call it. Because, a hamster will run, and not get anywhere. And that's exactly how I felt in my business. I was running so hard to make the revenue that I looked around and I was like, I have no time to manage these people that I'm fighting for my life to be able to pay for. Anyway, so what did I do about it? For the longest time, nothing. I suffered for months. I just kept on fighting the good fight, if you will, until I had a really bad month in revenue. Sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles in entrepreneurship. You could have a real hot streak and then you can have kind of those valley moments, those cold streaks. So I'm on this cold streak. I'm not making the revenue that I was enjoying previously, at least not that month compared to the other months. And I panicked. I was so worried that the whole thing was going to come crumbling down. So I did what I've done many times in my life, which is I found a book. So the book I found was Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And that's a brilliant book, and I totally recommend it to any entrepreneur. You should most definitely read this book. And the reason why is because it gives you a method of accounting that works well for entrepreneurs. It's not an official accounting method. It has nothing to do with compliance and making sure that your, T's are crossed and I's are dotted for the IRS. You still need to hire an accountant. You should probably have a bookkeeper as well. But what Profit First does is it helps entrepreneurs with their financial decision making. And after reading that book, I realized I'm like, oh my gosh, here are, first of all the reasons why my cash is where it is. If you've ever had the thought, I make too much money to have this be a problem, you really must read that book, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was making big money in the sales that I was making. That's true. But what I wasn't seeing is how much expense was going out month over month that I was obligated to, whether I made great sales or not. And that's where the vice grip showed up, is that pinch between the outflow and the inflow. This, by the way, is called cash flow. So what did I do about it? Well, I followed basically the steps in the book and I analyzed where my expenses were, and shock, oh behold, it turned out that I had committed more than I was earning and I needed to stop that. So it was tough, but I fired both of those resources. They were both super graceful. They were amazing resources, like I said. So we found them a new home where they could go get paid fairly for the work that they were doing. And I licked my wounds and continued on. Now, I could stop the story there, but the thing is that I went on to hire more people. It's just that I had to recover my business, kind of, I call it right size. I had to right size my business to match my actual cash flow, not my desired cash flow, so that I could hire smarter. Now, I didn't nail it. The next time I hired somebody, we went off into the sunset, happily ever after. But I am happy to report that several years later, I have developed some practices that have built us a lovely little dream team here at the Coaches Plaza. I want to share with you some of the needle movers, the things that I did very differently over the past couple of years versus when I was willy-nilly in my hiring, if I'm being completely honest. And maybe there's a few things that you'll take from this that you can put into your business so that you don't hire someone that you have to fire because it turns out you can't afford them. Or you can activate the talent that you actually have working for you, whether they're a contractor, agency, even if you've hired a coach. There's things you can do to help you to really activate the value of that investment. So let's unpack it. I'm really, really pumped to share this with you. Oh my gosh. All right, so here we go. How to stop working harder when you add team. How's that for a zinger of a title? I thought that was pretty good. So we're going to talk more about how to delegate, how to get great output out of the team input. I do not believe that you need to build a business like in total isolation in some cabin in the woods, right? Businesses are relationship based, right? You've got relationships with your clients. You're already well aware of that. The next level of business for you is probably building great relationships with more than clients, right? And not just trading time for money, but to start building authentic, collaborative relationships, right? And of course, let's get you off that hamster wheel of doom, okay? I can't stand the hamster wheel. That's why I'm making this video. I've got a few friends that I'm like, watch this video, so shout out and hello if you did make it over here. Okay, so why do we wind up on the hamster wheel in the first place? To be very frank with you, most people are hiring completely wrong right out the gate. What most people do is they hire in order to escape tasks that they don't like. They tend to delegate based from a place of frustration, so very emotionally led, and they don't make a solid, and I mean solid, link between the activities that talent is to perform and how that affects the bottom line of the business. And here's like the core thought that makes this not work, and the trap that I fell into as well, is you erroneously, there's a big word for you. You erroneously believe that your happiness is going to improve the performance of your business. And speaking as someone who is heavily invested in personal growth and development, somebody who is a certified high performance coach, I have multiple coaching certifications. I geek out and nerd out on the psychology and sociology of performance. It is awesome sauce. And a total fallacy to believe that when your bank account changes, your attitude automatically changes with it. In fact, there's really good science that shows that only 10% of your subjective well-being, your happiness, is dictated by your circumstances. So you might be a little happier having more cash flow. You might be a little happier with a bigger business. But by and large, most of what contributes to your happiness is, first of all, your genetic predisposition, and also the narrative with which you look at the world, like the perspective through which you look at the world. If you have kind of a trash perspective right now, a big business is going to highlight your trash perspective then. And if you don't do anything about shifting your narrative and shifting your interpretation of things, that's going to be a non-starter. Your business isn't stuck because you're miserable. I'm going to say that again. Your business isn't stuck because you're miserable. It's not stuck because you have anxiety. It's not stuck because you've got some alignment problem. Exactly. It's probably stuck because you're not doing the activities that help it to not be stuck. And that's something that I'm not even sure I could have heard way back in my timeline of the story that I was telling you. But it's the truth. I got the advice, hire a virtual assistant, because I felt frenetic. I felt anxious. I felt frustrated. But because I didn't have any clarity about what that role was actually going to execute and do and how that was to benefit the outcomes of the business, it definitely didn't make me happier having somebody else there. It just added more responsibility and stress. But it does not have to be that way. So what could it be like instead, right? So a smart operator is going to start with ideally their P&L. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't even really operate from a profit and loss statement. I know I didn't for the longest time. But it really does tell you, your cash flows will tell you, where do you make your money, right? Like how much money are you making and how much money are you spending in a period of time? That's a massive clue, my friend. If you're spending a huge amount on marketing, but you're getting a little trickle of clients because most of your business comes from networking and referrals, That's an opportunity right there. Does it make sense for you to turn around and hire a social media agency or a paid advertising agency or somebody to redo your website for the 15th time? Like, a lot of people just throw money at the problem, not thinking about what are the activities that this is going to affect. If you identify, okay, here's where my clients come from. Here's what they buy from me. Here's the first thing they buy from me. And when they come back, this is the next thing that they buy from me. This is what I do to create a client. And if you literally cut everything out of your business that was not that, you would save an enormous amount of money and you wouldn't even need most of the team that you think you need. Now, let's just say you really do want to grow and you really are actually out of capacity. Well, wouldn't it make sense to hire a role that is likely to move the needle directly in your particular business? Not because it was a good deal to hire them, not because you got a recommendation from somebody to do it, but because heart of hearts, geez, I've been getting a lot of my leads from social media, for example. Now I want to delegate social media and I can tell my person that I'm delegating to how I like my social media to operate because I know what actually works, for example. And if you're like, but I'm no good at social media. Okay, well, where did you get your business so far? If how you got your business so far was through networking and connection and referrals, then whoever you hire to amplify your work should help you with your networking, connection, and referrals. Tracking and making sense? Okay, so your hiring decisions should be based on what financially drives your business to grow, because you're holding yourself accountable to the cost of the team member, right? Wouldn't it make sense to tie it out to either making more money for the business or saving so much money and fulfilling on the business that it frees you up to make more money in other ways? Just saying. Okay, so that's the first piece. The second piece is what we do when we get it wrong. So I call this the delegation problem. So this hamster wheel of doom that I was describing earlier is where you're spending money on team members and systems and enablement and infrastructure and Slack and like all these things in order to enable you to have team members working with you, which adds complexity to the business. But if you find yourself taking the work back onto your plate to do it, you find yourself letting things pile up that are really actually vital and important to the success of your business. If you find yourself frustratingly like just hanging on to things and white knuckling and never giving it to the team member, that's kind of on you. Right? That's not kind of on you. It really is on you. When I hired those assistants years ago and I didn't give them any work to do and I'm cutting a check to pay for their time, that was actually fair. It was my responsibility to hire them. It was my responsibility to lead and steward them. And it was my responsibility to ultimately make the decision to end the contracts with them. So that's all on me. And I think early in my business, I was so hesitant to take that kind of radical responsibility. But when I was willing to take that responsibility and do the right things and implement some of the things I'm going to tell you about in this video, look at that. I ended up retaining team members. I ended up getting meaningful work done. I ended up having meaningful growth in my business in a manner that I could afford. Hallelujah. But it started with agency, activating my agency and accepting full responsibility for where I stood. Okay, so when we're stuck in doing all the work, we usually are giving unclear instructions. We are just manually handling the revisions and redoing stuff. We're wasting a bunch of time. And it can lead you to feeling really nervous about spending money to fix it. It can make you very frustrated. I hear that a lot from entrepreneurs. They're blaming their team, they're blaming their resources. And I think the worst part is you had such good intentions when you started, and now you actually have more to do than before you made the hire. Here's what I really want you to know. It's not really the team member's fault. It's yours for not having a system in place to manage yourself and manage your team. And I know that sounds so like, kind of on the nose, but it's true. And the thing is the reason you hire someone isn't because you want to abdicate and like leave your business. It's to give you more capacity to be able to grow your business, To be able to, yes, take care of yourself, that's super important, but you're never going to get 100% of the work off of your plate. In the beginning, you can expect 80% of any given task coming off your plate. Why? Because you're the one that sets the direction, and you're the one that will set the standard of what's acceptable for work products. I love this 10-80-10 rule. So when I'm working with my team, I really try to focus on this 10-80-10. Dan Martell, who wrote Buy Back Your Time, he always says 70% done is 100% awesome. And like, how true is that? Look around your office, look in your to-do list, in your Asana, your ClickUp, whatever you're using. What's not getting done, and how is that costing you? Is it costing you because it is impacting the customer experience? It's costing you because it's so expensive to get new clients in the door? Is it costing you because you are like just this helter-skelter distract-a-bus person that people are kind of like nervous to be around because you're so like strung out and tired and all of those kinds of things? Like, what's it actually costing you to not have the basic things taken care of because it's beyond your personal capacity? Big question, right? But if 70 or 80% done is 100% awesome, you're going to have so much more breathing room, because there's not too many things in your business that you cannot set a system or a process around and then therefore delegate that process to a team member. So the job is really shifting from being that endless doer to being someone who's directing the work. So let's just say you have a team right now, or you're setting up and gearing up to have another team member join you. The number one thing that I recommend the most is to use something called a briefing whenever you ask your team member to do something. So I was in a program a few years ago, and they did this whole training around the idea of executive communication. Coming from a corporate background, I'm like, ooh, executive, what does that mean? And I'd always been taught that executive communication was to make things very brief, very like short, very summarized and rolled up. And so I tended to communicate that way. I tended to communicate of like, oh, can you send an email? Can you update my calendar? Can you set up some reminders for this webinar? Oh, can you set up a landing page, right? And it would just be like these headlines of information when I communicated what I wanted to get done. And there's different levels of talent that you can hire as an entrepreneur. I love this term, batteries included. If you have a team member whose batteries included, what it means is you can give them a vague headline like that, like build a landing page for a lead magnet or design me a new lead magnet, and they will like catch that ball, snatch it out of the air, and it's like no more questions asked, and they will produce something for you that is thoughtful, considered, anticipating your needs. And the reason they're able to do that with batteries included is because they've built the skill. They have an immense amount of skill. And here's the other part of A+ players. They are not cheap. Okay, a really competent person is going to charge you money because a really competent person has options. Okay, like they can work for anybody. So I know this, and I've known this for a really long time. So I used to think, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to alleviate any of my work because I can only have like A+ players with batteries included, and I can't afford that. So I guess I'm just going to have to sally along by myself. Whole big story. Here's the truth. A great system can be run by almost anyone. And I'm just going to give you an example. Right? You've probably been to a McDonald's, and this is not commentary on their food, but observationally, they are one of the most successful restaurants in the world. And they don't do it by having batteries included talent. They're able to train people really quickly into their systems and processes because they are so consistent and very clear about producing consistent, repeatable results. World class with that, with the systems. Now, you might not want to eat McDonald's for different reasons. That's not the point of this video. My point is that you can accomplish so much by designing a great system. And then you need trustworthy, humble, ideally with a sense of humor people who are excited to learn the system, to develop their skills. And if you have somebody with the right attitude paired with an excellent system, you will cover so much ground and you don't have to break the bank. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I made is I brought in like hungry, happy, humorous talent who was really excited to learn without having the system in place. And I tried to build up the team members and build the system at the same time. And that ended up being chaos. That ended up being so ungodly expensive at the end of the day, and very, very frustrating, because I realized I was depending on people knowing things they could not know, and I wasn't supplementing the knowledge gap with a well-established system. And so when you have team members and you're running like on a hamster wheel because you can't keep up with paying for them, because it's just because at the end of the day, it has to do with your clarity about what is the cause and effect in your business, and have you codified the system, the process to create as much cause as possible to create the desired effects in your business. So let's keep going on this, because I could talk about this for a million years. At the very beginning of establishing rhythms and systems with my team members, I use very detailed briefings. And these briefing documents are awesome because I can actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you that. I'm just going to make sure it came through. Perfect. Okay. So it looks like this. It'll say team member. And then I love to open with gratitude. Thank you so much for your attention to this. Thank you so much for what you did yesterday. Thank you so much for you bringing so much joy, whatever you're grateful for. Just like make it real, okay? Then I start with the plain ask. So remember executive communication? I used to think that it was about like having the highlight of the conversation. Really strong communication is extremely detailed. It leaves the reader, the listener, with nothing left to say. They are just so clear about what needs to happen now. So this briefing is a template that I created to help me make sure I was being very complete in my communication. So when I make the ask, I don't just say, build me a landing page. I might say, hey team member, thank you so much for your help with building the Canva document yesterday. It looks beautiful. Now we're going to move on to building the landing page. I would like you to build the landing page in full, including the headline, the layout, and if you've never done one before, you might just say, I want it to look approximately like this, and give an example. You want to be really clear about exactly what it is that you're asking. So I want you to create this landing page, and I want it to have this domain. I want it to have this kind of link. I want it to use, I want you to use AI to write the headline. Like, I love empowering my team with AI tools because it allows them to be able to fill in some of the blanks, even beyond what I've included in the briefing. But if it's important to me that something be included, or it looks a particular way, or it's done a particular way, then it's on me to say that in my communication. That's my attitude towards it. I don't always get it right, but if that's how I'm looking at this thing, then the briefing ends up being super helpful. Then I love to tell them, here's what makes this impactful, or here's what makes this so important right now. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they're managing their team, especially early on, is they just lob tasks over the wall. They just want to lob all these tasks over the wall. And when somebody who doesn't come batteries included receives that huge number of tasks, and they're doing their best and they're coming up in their career and they want to please you, appease you, and they get just all this work to do, but they can't discern what's the most impactful, important thing to work on right now. What should I focus through? What should I deprioritize to make sure that this, gets done and gets back in front of the boss? It's a lot to sort out and handle. Really explaining like this is the impact allows them to start to understand how you look at priority. And so then down the road, if you're being a little less formal in your briefings, which yes, you can do as your team members build competency and as they anticipate your needs more and more after building a relationship together, they'll be able to discern, oh, this is more or less important relative to other things. I love giving a reason for my due date. Another big mistake, a lot of entrepreneurs just lob a task over the wall and they expect it to be done same day. Or they don't really care when it gets done, and then the team member takes their sweet time and is probably going to procrastinate because they don't realize how important it is to you to get done. And one of my internal rules for this is if it's not important enough for me to set a due date, it's not important enough for me to ask my team member to do. And that's a really helpful reminder for me because I am an ambitious person and I just want the whole world on a platter really fast, just like any other human. So just reminding myself that if it's not worth articulating in the briefing, if it's not worth thinking about the due date, if it's not worth being complete, then it's probably not worth doing. It's a pretty great and very effective lens, in my opinion. I'm a huge fan of Loom. I'm going to talk about Loom a little more in a second, but I recommend doing a video recording to show them what you mean, especially when you first start working together. And then for this next part of the briefing, especially if you're working with like virtual assistants, making sure that you've got their access and everything all worked out, that's pretty powerful. As your team grows, you can also encourage cross collaboration. So, I recommend you check in with another team member so that you can learn the ropes of how to do XYZ, if that's true, right? And then finally, this is so huge, I will consider this done if it looks like this. So powerful to articulate that. So many times entrepreneurs are disappointed by the work products of their team members, but they also never took responsibility to say like, here's what good looks like. And by the way, if you get a work product that's undesirable and it doesn't meet your standards, you can always feed back on that, and you should feed back on that. But it really is nice for both of you to think about this. And this is another one where I'm like, if I can't be bothered to articulate what good looks like or to find a good example or to show what my standards actually are on this task, then I probably don't need to ask somebody else to do it. And it doesn't need to be done at all. And if I have like a big objection to that idea, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I better define what good looks like. I love giving that due date. And I love saying like, please confirm that you've got this by replying and letting me know if you have any questions. Last part of the briefing is I'm leaving this action with you, team member. You're accountable for completing this from here. If you run into a challenge, please leave a comment so I can support you. Please leave a comment on the task once you're ready for my review. And thank you, right? So this briefing is incredible. And if you DM me the word briefing to my Instagram, I'll give you the link in the show notes below. I will send you this exact briefing and you can use it and copy it and tweak it and just do whatever you want with it. Just be more effective with your team. All right, so I talked a little bit about Loom. If you're not familiar, Loom is a video recording service. You can record 5 minutes for free. Honestly, it's like $15 a month. So worth it. The next time you go to do something that's repetitive in your business, just throw Loom on and record yourself doing it. And then send it to your assistant and ask them to do it from now on. And that's how you systemically get things off of your plate, and that you don't have to repeat yourself or just fill your calendar full of ineffective meetings. So the last thing I wanted to share with you is this idea of the feedback loop. I think it's really, really important when you're working with team members, especially, you're moving ideas out of your head and into someone else's head. And there's a lot of opportunity for miscommunication along that journey. So instead of thinking like, I've got to lob this task over the wall, or I've got to blinders on, plug my nose, jump in and let this person just take it from here, really build in an intentional feedback loop, right? You assign the brief, you review what the output is of the work, and then you give specific and actionable feedback about what you liked and also what you would like to see improved. And you iterate on that until it meets your standards. You don't let things fly and slide without it meeting your standards. And when you do this, what you find is that your team members get better and better at anticipating what your standards actually are, and it actually reduces the amount of feedback that's required in order to execute the task, and then you can add new tasks, new team, keep growing your business, keep going one step at a time. If you found this super helpful, let me know. If you like content like this, let me know. And again, send me the word briefing and I will send you my briefing template. Just go to Instagram and send me a DM. Okay, thank you so much, and we will see you in an upcoming video.